my dear friend Stan Grenz, who died a few years ago, he wrote a book called Renewing the Center. And Stan does a little history of evangelicalism. You know, the funny thing is, what we call evangelicalism is a new phenomenon. It's, you know, 6 decades old, maybe 7 decades old. Now, if you want to trace evangelical to sort of you could trace it back as part of the, some people would see it as the pietistic stream, the more Wesleyan stream. Others would see more in the Reformed stream. You know, I mean, there's many different phenomena, and we're all living with a mythology if we think there's one thing called evangelicalism. The Billy Graham evangelicalism, the Christianity Today evangelicalism, is a very new, recent phenomenon. You know, so we have to first of all realize that. Right. But Stan Grenz's analysis is that there is a moderate pole. There is no liberal pole of evangelicalism. There's a moderate pole and a fundamentalist pole. And what he, I think, successfully does in this book, Renewing the Center, is he says, look, it was fundamentalists who tried to move away from fundamentalism. But every once in a while, the fundamentalists come and cut these people off. And so it ends up retracting into a more fundamentalist group. And I do think there is a phenomenon called fundamentalism. And I think there's Christian fundamentalism, Jewish fundamentalism, Muslim fundamentalism, atheistic fundamentalism. And I know I took some heat because of this, but I think I took some heat, if I can be totally frank, because evangelicals who are more moderate are always afraid of the people to their right, who will hammer them as liberals. So what they have to do every once in a while is they have to find somebody on their left flank who they can throw off the bus so they can prove to these guys that they're legit. I just saw a dear friend of mine do this. He just threw me off the bus to prove to some people more conservative than he that he's with them, he's not with me. The irony is, in a private email to me, he says, you know, he loves me, he's my friend. He treats me terribly in public to prove something to them, presuming that I will stay his friend, which I will. But the thing I'm sad about is what he's just done is he's played in fear to this extreme base on his right. That to me is something that should not be tolerated. It shouldn't be coddled. Jesus didn't coddle his right wing, who by the way weren't the Sadducees, I mean the Pharisees. I think his right wing were the Sadducees, but and the chief priests and all that. But I don't think Jesus coddled them and played to them. I think he had the courage to graciously differ. And that's what I think evangelicals need if they want to have an identity that's not just fundamentalists with a bachelor's degree.
Well, I appreciate that. That's, you know, I think a big question that I think people struggle with, especially as we move into a postmodern culture, of how to make those definitions. And another definition I think that...
Could I just add something about that?
Yes, please.
One of the things we have to realize is those definitions get framed in relation to a set of conditions that change.
You do.
And so that's one of our problems. The conditions keep changing, and I think that's part of our challenge right now. Old line Protestant liberalism was the enemy and the antagonist to which evangelicalism defined itself, and each became counter-dependent to the other. They define themselves in reaction and contradistinction to the other. In my opinion, that sort of liberal mainline institutional Protestantism, secularized enlightenment, rationalized Protestantism, is dead. It has nothing to offer anybody. Now, thank God, God always can raise life out of death, you know, and I think there are wonderful things happening even out of the embers of that house fire. The irony is, I think evangelicals, if you look at the statistics, they're driving their younger generations away. They're just maybe 30 years behind these guys, but I think they're following a very similar trajectory. And this is why, because I think a new set of questions has been raising that all of us have to have a fresh vision of. But sorry to go on.
No, I think that's excellent. I mean,
hey, thanks for listening to this 12 Ends interview with author Brian McLaren. For further 12 Ends interviews, make sure to become a subscriber to The Ordained Barista. Thanks.